Jump down right into the action here and see what these opening hands look like. A pretty good one there for Matti Kuisma and Noriyuki Mori. Also quite pleased with his turn one Kitty Cat Cauldron Familiar down on the battlefield, and it's going to get to pinging. Irrigated Farmland for Matti Kuisma as the turn passes back. Trail of Crumbs on turn two. This is going very well so far for Noriyuki Mori, who wants to close out this game before Matti Kuisma can get his engines going.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting Trail on 2 is ideal, and Witch's Oven off the top is excellent as well. I was going to say, getting that third land for Woe Strider to be able to sack Cauldron Familiar and then bring it back and sacrifice that food is still a nice way to make sure you hit land drops, but Witch's Oven is a little bit better of a way to make sure you hit land drops.
Witch's Oven, of course, would enable the cat sacrificing the food, which would allow Trail of Crumbs to trigger and go and look for other permanents on top of the library. But instead going for the Woe Strider here, and unfortunately may meet its end to a Lightning Helix that we see hanging out in Matti's hand.
Yep, runs the risk of Lightning Helix actually being a removal spell that's actually going to gain you life. But as Luis was saying in the intro, it's not really about this getting these few amount of creatures over the finish line to kind of nickel and dime your opponent. Mm-hmm. You need one of these gigantic things like Corvold, like Cat Oven combo with Trail to just gain more cards. And the one advantage that these Jund decks have against this version of Jeskai is they don't have this Gear Hulk version that goes way over the top that can finish the game pretty quickly. You do have time to set that stuff up against these style of Jeskai control decks.
Yeah, for sure. So an interesting choice here for Maddie as he draws Relic of Progenitus, which can deal with graveyard shenanigans, but doesn't find the third land. So Expressive Iteration is going to be the go-to here for Kuisma as he looks to get the third land down on the battlefield.
Yeah, if there wasn't a food, yeah, that's what you want right here with Maddie's hand. And the hands change so much in this matchup for the Jeskai deck with the addition of Expressive Iteration. All of a sudden, if you keep a 2-lander with Expressive Iteration, you just snap keep that. You're like, of course this card's going to find me lands. That's what it does on turn 3. And that's what we see here as well.
Yeah, digging 3 cards deep, you got to expect to find a land, unless you're the world's most unluckiest player. Relic of Progenitus is going to take care of the Woe Strider, as that is the only targetable target, I would say, as dear old kitty cat can just jump back out of the graveyard in response.
Yeah, still can't complain about being able to take a Woe Strider out and make sure that's not going to come back for the next game, especially for game 1, where these rest in pieces that we saw be so powerful yesterday against these Jund decks are not in the deck yet. Relic is really the only graveyard hate for game 1.
So Thoughtseize here goes uncontested. Gets to take a look at a pretty scary hand here. What is the worst thing for Noriyuki Mori?
Worst thing here is eventually just Teferi and then untap and have something like Memory Lapse where you can protect Teferi and then untap with it. So we think we're probably going to see some high equity put on Teferi, but Narset is also worth it. Mystical Dispute to be able to counter this inevitable Corvold is valuable as well. So I think it's between Dispute and Teferi here would be my guess. Definitely don't really care about Shark Typhoon that much. There's enough cards where Expressive Iteration is not the biggest deal, so I would lean on one of those 2 cards.
Yeah, Teferi is a troublesome planeswalker, to say the least, so that's going to get discarded there by the Thoughtseize, and the turn gets passed back. Rogan Triumph is the draw for Maddie, who has all his lands now that he could need for the time being. So it's going to be interesting to see what he decides to do here, if anything. Relic of Progenitus is going to force the exile just to keep that graveyard in check.
And I wanted to point out one thing. We've been talking about Noriyuki Mori's, how much Magic Noriyuki plays and gets ready and prepares for these tournaments. And it's really something else. But I was, being a fly on the wall in the testing team of Matti Kuisma, Arnie Huschenbeth, David Ingles, and
Sam Rolfe.
And Sam Rolfe, thank you. And yesterday after the event, it's really late with their time zones, and it was like 2 a.m. for them. And instead of going to sleep, maybe eating some food or something like that, they were all just going over their matches from day 1 just to see if they made any mistakes or anything like that, which was really awesome to see. And I'm just looking, and they're going over matches that they won, and I'm just like, wow, that is some dedication there.
Now, that's something we've seen quite a few of the hardcore, super duper professional players doing is like, oh, I could have done this better than that better. It's like, but you won. It's like, yeah, it doesn't matter. I still didn't do this right. It's like, oh, wow, okay. So
Yeah,
that's some dedication for you. You love to see it.
absolutely. You love when people that care that deeply about the game. It's really impressive, and you see it from both players. With Noriyuki, with how much he plays, and the same with Matti Kuisma and their testing team.
I mean, to be fair, if you're gonna go, you know, neck deep into something, this is the weekend to do it. This Challenger Gauntlet, it's not just oh cool, you win a trophy. No, you win a spot into the World Championship. Like
Yeah.
that, you want that. That is
Yeah.
something that Magic players, anyone playing competitively, that is like the end goal for so many people. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Noriyuki just chipping away here with the Witch's Oven. Nothing happening yet from Matti Kuisma's side. Just Relic of Progenesis keeping things going. Trail of Crumbs activation is going to allow Noriyuki to find a couple more cards. Finds another land. Fabled Passage. Would love to find a Mayhem Devil to get some benefit off of these sacrifice triggers.
Yep, and we saw Matti Kuisma here just leave up Mystical Dispute because this was the turn where we could have went land 5 Corvold, and there's really no good answer right now besides that dispute. So instead of jamming something like Narset, even though it can't really get attacked down, a really smart play to make sure Maddie would not have to deal with a Corvold this turn.
Double Lightning Helix is the draw here for Maddie. So if Mystical Dispute doesn't get Corvold, that surely will. But not with all those sacrifice triggers.
Yeah, that's pretty brutal here. Maddie probably looking to get an untapped land here. So now you even saw a little wince there from Maddie because it is the play he's probably considering here is Expressive Iteration and then trying to hit an untapped land and then have a land 3 available for Mystical Dispute. But if you just brick on that and you get to resolve a Corvold, that could be very, very dangerous here. Just goes for Narset instead.
So Narset Part of Veils will hit the battlefield, going to -2 immediately, sees Search for Azcanta, 2 Anger of Gods, and a replacement Narset.
Interesting.
So that means that there were no lands on top of the library there.
Yeah, so good call not going for that line. Yeah.
that would have whiffed.
Yeah, that would have not went great, that's for sure. Interesting here because Anger is not that great. There's some draws from Jun Food that can just spit out a bunch of Woe Striders, Mayhem Devils, stuff like that, where Anger of the Gods can actually be, pretty effective. But these kind of Cat Oven Trail draws where Noriyuki is just using his mana to make sure that he gets land drops and stuff like that. Anger of the Gods ends up being not that great.
Yeah, there's too many ways to dodge removal with this deck. It's quite resilient in that regard. Scorching Dragonfire is going to take care of the Narset because, if Corvold's coming down next turn, you'd like to draw some cards off of him, right?
And I think it's going to be Corvold turn. I think Matti Kuisma was really hoping that was the game plan, was to stop all this draw from Corvold and just make it a giant creature, which then Maddie could double Lightning Helix down. But as it stands now, this Corvold is kind of just going to go nuts.
Yeah, it will be able to get out of range with all the cats snacking and sacrificing going on. Unfortunately, won't be able to capitalize on the Fabled Passages. But if you can resolve a Corvold and be able to draw a bunch of cards on it before it potentially dies, depending on what Maddie draws off the top of the library, that's a pretty good turn for Mori.
Yeah, absolutely. This seems like a slam dunk play when there's no counter magic available. And yeah, we see Corvold come down.
Goodbye, kitty cat. Oh, in response.
Yep, gets that extra sacrifice trigger.
Oh, hello. Mayhem Devil time.
And this is where Corvold just looks insane, especially with Cat Oven, where not only are you draining, not only do you have the option to use Trail of Crumbs if you had a little bit more mana, but now every single time the cat comes in or goes out, you're getting that additional card draw. And then this is really how the Jun decks win these type of matchups, with these kind of draws.
So Cat's going to jump in and out of the oven a couple of times, make a few pies. Corvold's going to find a couple more cards. Good time here for the Jun sacrifice deck.
And now we get to play a land so that when we bring back this Cauldron Familiar one more time, we get a trail trigger as well as a draw step. And Corvold right now is at that magical number of 7, where it's not going to be able to be double Lightning Helix. So looking at Maddie's hand, there's no clean answer for this except chump blocking with a shark. And there's no guarantee that that plan is even going to work with Mayhem Devil staring from the other side.
Oh, yeah. Lightning Helix does a good job of taking care of the Mayhem Devil, but, like we said, in response, this deck can just sacrifice a bunch of things, ping down the shark, and then you have a bit of a problem. So maybe the best option here is to go for that one of Justice Strike just to try and get Corvold off the board.
Yep, that's a really big deal too. I believe there's a one of Wrath of God as well. And we're going to see a bit of an interesting interaction here, Ailey, where there is a cat in the graveyard and there's a relic on the other side. So it's a weird dynamic where you don't want to just pop the relic because then the cat comes in to play in response. And you don't want to just use cat at end step because you put that trigger on the stack and then you could get rid of it. So Noriyuki Mori playing that correctly there and just untapping. That food's not going anywhere. You can do it next turn.
And Mayhem Devil's going to join the fray here. Perhaps both of them.
Yeah, definitely an option.
But the problem is with the sacrifices that would happen now, Narset's still on the battlefield, so Corvold won't get the cards drawn.
Correct. We have already drawn one card, and you can't really attack it. The thing we could be looking at, double Mayhem Devil here. You can deal with one of them, and then at least you can put some of these sacrifice triggers, aim them at Narset, maybe get that dead, or get the shark dead and attack Narset. Regardless, you're going to lose out on some value that Corvold's going to have. But getting those cards off the battlefield is going to be step number one here for Noriyuki.
So Maddie's eyeing out that memory lapse, which I don't think Mori will be too sad to see out of hand, especially with two Mayhem Devils available.
Yeah, Lightning Helix and Memory Lapse are kind of playing the same role here, so it's kind of, pick one at this point. Lightning Helix is not really going to gain the life if you aim it at Mayhem Devil anyways if it hits the battlefield. Interesting to do this in response instead of playing Mayhem Devil. Yeah, I think that makes a little more sense to me.
So the cat is free to jump out at any point with Maddie's tapped out now. We'll take a look on top of the library. Finds the land drop, so that will still enable the second Mayhem Devil to come down.
And I guess, are we looking at a lethal count here? Because we can sack the cat, bring it back, deal 2 to the shark. That puts Corvold to 10. The attack would put it to 11. So it looks like but it puts it to 11, and then the Mayhem Devil would deal 1 more damage. So it looks like we have 12 damage here. We are 1 short of lethal. Yep.
So knowing that and knowing that Lightning Helix is a card that's being played, do you think he goes for it to get him down to 1? Looks like it.
We're gonna find out, or just goes for dealing with Narset here, even though it is dealing some overkill on Narset to say the least. But that's still a very important card. Right now, Noriyuki knows the hand.
Doesn't know about the Lightning Helixes though.
Excuse me, I'm wrong. Yeah, this is just 12. 1 from Mayhem Devil when you sack. Yep.
He does sacrifice when he attacks. There you go. Yeah. Easy peasy. Math is hard. We haven't had our coffee this morning.
Exactly. Yeah, impressive work from Noriyuki. There's been multiple times that we've been watching Noriyuki and it's playing this Jund deck, and we're like, okay, you can deal with these permanents, you can deal with this, and then Noriyuki's like, no, I think I'll just kill my opponent.
I'm just gonna kill my opponent. Yeah. He's so many steps ahead of us. It's just it's insane how much he knows, and just this deck. He knows this deck inside out. Take a look at the quick sideboarding here. I want to see some status statue going off. I don't know about you, Corey.
Yeah, that seems really sweet. I'm starting to think it's the 25,000 matches that he's played. I think that might give you an advantage in the game of Magic.
That could have something to do with it. Yeah.
Yeah, coming in from Maddie, just a ton of removal to be able to deal with basically all the creatures. The early drops with Portable Holes, Devout Decree to be able to deal with Corvold, Justice Strike the same, and then some Doman's Vetoes to actually deal with the really tricky cards like Trail, Thoughtseize, Witch's Oven, these types of things.
Yeah, Doman's Veto always feels like a bit of an underwhelming card in this matchup, because look at all these non-creature spells, the Thoughtseizes, the Witch's Ovens, like you mentioned. They're so cheap. And, most of the time they are able to double spells. So Doan's Veto, while it will catch one thing, won't necessarily protect Maddie against all of the threats.
Yep, exactly. And I want to point out something. We saw yesterday, Matti Kuisma brought in the Rest in Peace and decides to not bring it in now. So I don't know if the team decided that that card is just not really needed, but went with a little bit of a different sideboard plan against this Jun food list.
It's a little bit of a yikes here for Mori. Multi 5.
Yeah, that is not ideal. That's for sure. Definitely a very reactive hand. And mulling to 5 on the draw with just Thoughtseize and some bindings to wait for your opponent to play cards like Search for Iskanta and Teferi. Not really ideal.
It's going to have to draw a couple of action cards here. Does find one in Mayhem Devil. Is still looking for a mountain, though. A Search for Iskanta hits the board, and Mori is not happy about that. Thoughtseize is going to take a look in hand, see the Helix, the Wrath, the Memory Lapse, and good old Teferi.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, very good hand here. It's, do you really want to just try to sneak in your threats and take the Memory Lapse so you can make sure to resolve stuff? Or do you just take the Teferi, realizing that Matti Kuisma has your creatures on lockdown pretty well with this hand, with Lightning Helix and Wrath, but decides playing his spells is more important than getting rid of the powerful Planeswalker?
Especially when you've multi 5, you need to find your land drops. You don't want to be basically reset every turn. That tempo loss is not going to win in the game. So I like taking the Memory Lapse there. If Lightning Helix targets something, you just sacrifice whatever threats on the board, as in the Mayhem Devil or the Woe Strider, or even this Goose that's likely going to get sent west, as there's still no land here for Mori.
Yeah, absolutely. And just probably the best possible draw there for Matti Kuisma. Just expressive iteration at these early to mid stages of the game, specifically on turn 3, where you can still play a land, is just the best thing you can be doing, in most formats.
For sure.
Not even just historic.
A Memory Lapse drawn here for Maddie, so he'll be able to counter whatever comes down next. The Goose is going to get sacrificed, and there is a land, so Woe Strider will be available to Noriyuki Mori. It's going to get sent back here by Maddie without hesitation.
Yeah, and here comes, Noriyuki Mori is just like, okay, please no land 5, but with Search for Iskanta and Expressive Iteration, it's pretty easy to expect to see a Teferi here. And now this is heavily advantaged for Jeskai control.
On the plus side, though, he doesn't have a way to protect it. So if there is a 4th land, and he's lucky in the next turn, Binding the Old Gods can take care of Teferi, but he needs Matti Kuisma to whiff, basically, with a draw from Teferi, a Scribe from Search for Iskanta, and an Expressive Iteration. That seems a little tough.
And even if we get that, we're just using a 1-for-1 next turn to deal with Teferi. Teferi already drew 2 cards, untapped some mana, already got the value. And now, I don't know the exact count of the graveyard, but we're getting very close to Search for Iskanta time, and there's not enough pressure here. So we're going to be able to see turns like activate Iskanta, Lightning Helix your 1 creature. Activate Iskanta, Wrath of God. Activate Iskanta, Narset. And until there's just no more things to cast on Noriyuki's side. And that's a really tough hill to climb when you're not already at an advantageous place on the battlefield.
Yeah, this is going to be super tough indeed. Rogan Triome is available to play for Maddie. Goes to the Narset, Parter of Veils. This will be able to dig even deeper to try and find a way to protect these Planeswalkers who, along with Search for Iskanta, will just win the game here outright.
Oh, man.
Woo, there you go. Memory Lapse.
Memory Lapse is great here. We're going to be untapping 2 lands, so Lightning Helix is going to be available to save Narset. That actually might be more important than letting Binding take down Teferi. But we'll see. If we don't see a red source from Noriyuki Mori, we are definitely more incentivized to Memory Lapse a Binding because it can go find one of these red sources.
Yes.
We'll see what Maddie chooses here for this next turn.
So end step Teferi on tap. We're going to snack on a few things here. And there is land number 4. Are you going to risk it for the biscuit, Mori? How badly do you want a red source?
Yeah, especially knowing about that Memory Lapse, it's pretty discouraging knowing, well, I got to keep this just so I can cast my spell, but I'm going to have to cast it 2 turns in a row, it looks like.
Yeah. But this is pretty nifty. Lightning Helix leaves Maddie tapped out. which will mean that binding resolves. Would we see a binding the old gods on the Search for Azcanta instead to prevent that flip?
I think you still have to go with Teferi. Teferi is only 2 turns away from embleming, and we've seen this time and time again in these Jeskai control decks. If you're drawing 1 to 2 cards a turn and you're exiling a couple permanents, it doesn't take very long for Jund to be completely out of the game.
Yeah. Another memory lapse in hand here for Kuisma. A backup Narset Potter of Veils found. Search for Azcanta. Shenanigans incoming. Oh, hey, Shark Typhoon.
And we saw Matti Kuisma yesterday be pretty aggressive about just casting Shark Typhoon. So get ready, Chad. Hardcast might be on its way.
I mean, what else are you going to do with the Shark Typhoon? Cycle it?
I think that's the only ability is hardcast it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
So there is the red-green source that you mentioned. So we'll be able to get down the red threats. But they're pretty much not going to stay for long. Let me just look at Kuisma's hand. This is gross. 2 memory lapses, a Shark Typhoon, a Wrath of God.
Here
He's
we
just
go.
got everything he could possibly want.
Yes.
Shark attack.
Yeah, that's so brutal here. Going Shark Typhoon, even if you're not getting the value of using your Azcanta, which is usually the game plan you want to do, is just activate that every turn and do something else. Get Shark Typhoon on the battle first, and then that becomes the game plan. And it becomes really tough when all your memory lapses come with a 2/2 Shark. All your Narsets come with 3/3s. Your Wraths come with 4. Wait, yeah, that's not the best combo.
Well,
but
they do come with 4/4s. They just die immediately, you know.
Exactly.
Not the best idea, but take one for the team, little shark.
Exactly.
Here comes the Wrath. We're going to see a couple sacrifices just to ping down this threat on the board. Couple more to face. Yeah, go for it.
Maddie has officially gotten to the phase of the game where he feels really comfortable throwing that leg up on the desk there. That shows some comfortableness right there.
What, you mean you don't play Magic like that?
Only when I have Shark Typhoon and Azcanta out. That's the only time. Yeah.
Oh, don't shake your head at the cat. The cat can do all the things. Believe.
It could even get put on top of the library.
Yeah. I mean, you don't really mind Woe Strider going on top of the library because you just get another goat, right? But yeah, memory lapse kind of sucks here. For Noriyuki, gonna go for Search for Azcanta, or Azcanta the Sunken Rune first and foremost. Finds a portable hole, so that will be able to catch some ovens. But goodbye, Woe Strider. Back on top of the library you go. And here comes Teferi.
And that should just about do it here. Teferi being able to draw a bunch of cards, double activate his Azcanta if you want. You have memory lapse for the next spell. The world is Matti Kuisma's oyster here.
Mm-hmm. The Shark Wrangler. Oh, there's a Justice Strike. Don't think we'll need it, though, because, Ether Gust, just whatever you try and play, I'm not letting it resolve. Oh, boy. Yep. World, Oyster, Matti Kuisma.
Exactly. And remember, Noriyuki Mori is leading this tournament right now in first place, tied in a 3-way tie for at 5-1 as the best record here. Matti Kuisma is not far behind here. So if this were to go Matti Kuisma's way, we're going to have a lot of people at the very top here fighting for those 12 spots.
Yeah, and Noriyuki Mori knows at this point there's really no reason to waste your thinks or your clicks or anything like that on that game. So jump into game number 3. And what is the game plan now for Noriyuki Mori if he wants to win this?
Yeah, not mulligan to 5. That would be
help.
a great start. That was really just a tough game to win from the beginning. Noriyuki was missing land. Had to put Corvold to the bottom, which could have been great at certain key spots, and just the mulligans really destroyed him there. So keep a good hand, be proactive, try to get trail on turn 2 before Matti Kuisma has Dovin's Veto or Memory Lapse or something like that to interact. That's going to be the game plan.
Alrighty, before we jump into the deciding game here between these two players, we're going to take a very short break, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the Challenger Gauntlet. We are ready into the action here. It is round number 7, Matti Kuisma versus Noriyuki Mori. We're going to jump into the deciding game here to see who can better their records on day 2 of competition.
All right, let's do it. Big game ahead of us here.
Oh, okay. Okay, I kind of like what I see from both hands there. Both players keeping. We like to see it.
Yep, a little bit of an awkward mana base for Noriyuki, but overall a great hand. Matti Kuisma has a hand that is really all about setup, so this hand is realistically pretty slow. That Lightning Helix was pretty big at being able to stem those early aggressive lines that this Jund food deck can actually produce.
I love that little pause. I can't tell you how many times I've done that, where I've held up the cat and I'm like, yes, I will play it. But wait, thoughtseize. Hello.
Yes.
Very, very tempting. You see it, you want it, you're like, okay, but what if they have a veto next turn? Then what?
Yes, it is very important in Magic to not get tunnel visioned on a play that you would make. That is a good lesson to learn.
Yeah. So unfortunately not able to get that Search for Canter out of hand. But I kind of like the more aggressive approach, at least to start things off here.
Yeah, I would agree as well. The cat oven combo is really, really important. Thoughtseize is important as well for turn 2 for cards like Search for Canter or Rest in Peace, but it's not completely devastating if those hit. Rest in Peace would have been really bad. That would have been the card that would have been the worst, but we saw Matti Kuisma just didn't even bring it in.
Yeah, that would have been a bit of a rat roll. Field Passage going to be cracked here, not taking any risks. Going to get that third land available to Noriyuki Mori so that Mayhem Devil can hit the board next turn.
That was a really big draw in favor of Matti Kuisma. Noriyuki Mori not drawing an untapped third land there. Now Matti Kuisma has the option to get one of these expressive iterations out of the hand instead of having to Lightning Helix Mayhem Devil. So a little bit of breathing room, and Matti Kuisma should have a nice setup turn, which is very much needed with 2 expressive iterations in hand.
Yeah, so decision point here, is this Wrath of God worth keeping in the library? Does he want to draw that right now, or is that going to go to the bin?
I think you put that to the graveyard. If you didn't have Lightning Helix, I would think you keep this. The only thing that Matti Kuisma is really considering is like, okay, I do not have a way to deal with Corvold in 2 turns. If it goes land, Corvold, this is that answer. So that's the scary thing. That could be a moment Matti Kuisma could regret if this Corvold goes absolutely insane in a couple of turns. But that's the dividends right there, is Devout Decree is that answer. So I would assume that's going to hand. This is a problem, though, that there's no land. So you only get 1 card.
It is a bit of a problem here. He does have lands in hand, so that's not the biggest ish. But, like we've mentioned before, Corey, ideally you're finding an extra land out of this Expressive Iteration turn. Yeah,
Expressive Iteration is a great card. When it's 2 mana, select one of these 3 cards. It's Anticipate. We've seen that card, but it's not really a staple of any format. And when you get 2 of those cards and play a land, then it's really a dominant Magic card.
So a bit of an oops there from Matti Kuisma. Nothing you can really do about it, though. Yeah. That's just the game being the game, pretty much.
Absolutely. But Devout Decree is the decision here, just to be able to deal with Corvold if it goes land, Corvold. And we just saw the land off the top. So really big draw for Noriyuki, and Corvold could come down as soon as next turn. And even if Devout Decree answers it straight away, you still get quite a few cards out of it, at least 3 cards by sacking Cat, sacking the food to bring back Cat, and sacking a land. So it will still replenish itself.
Here comes another Expressive Iteration. Will he find land this time? He does indeed. And also an Ether Gust. So that's another way to deal with the big threat in Corvold Faker's King.
A much better way at that, because it doesn't get those triggers. You put that onto the stack, and now that 1 colorless blue spell is going to resemble Time Walk a lot more than a removal spell, because it will just straight up prevent Noriyuki Mori from drawing those cards next turn if he draws the land.
So Mayhem Devil, Cat, and Oven are going to get to pinging Matti Kuisma down. There is an opportunity here for Lightning Helix to take care of the Mayhem Devil, as there's no sack outlets currently for Noriyuki Mori. I would, however, leave him vulnerable to a Corvold.
Yep, and this is the risk. And now Noriyuki Mori is tapping the top of the deck, just like, come on, and it's there, land number 5.
He finds it. Corvold Faker's King will be coming down this turn. Maddie does have an answer for it in Devout Decree, but won't be able to prevent the card draw this turn.
And this is why Corvold is so insane. Like, the answer is already there, right? Like, this card is going to be dealt with next turn by Devout Decree or Aether Gust or, maybe something off the top of the deck. But we're going to get a ton of cards off this.
Mm-hmm.
And now where Noriyuki Mori was just going to, hope that Matti Kuisma plays something to Binding next turn, now we'll just have options as well. So a really, really big land 5 there. And there it is.
When he replaces himself, I was about to say, okay, Corvold's done his job. He's replaced himself threefold. And then some. There's another Corvold off the top of the library. So Matti Kuisma is in big, big trouble at this point.
Unreal. I mean, just look at this card on rate. 5 mana, draw 4 cards, get a removal spell out of your opponent's hand. Like, that is just incredible. And it really is the reason to play this deck.
Goodness me. Narset is going to have to do quite a bit of work here, but first things first, let's get Corvold off the board. And it goes Devout Decreeing. Get a Scry as well. So let's see if we can dig a little deeper. That's going to go to the bottom, whatever it was. And just going to hold up that Aether Gust and Memory Lapse in case of next Corvold.
Yeah, and this is one of these turns that Noriyuki Mori is pretty incentivized to play a very good thing. So I wouldn't be shocked if we see Corvold here just because of that 4 mana and Escanta. Because not only if this resolves, great, you're miles ahead. If it doesn't, Matti Kuisma doesn't get an Escanta activation, and that is very valuable right now. So whenever I see Escanta on the other side of me, and there's only, that 4 mana to use it, I jam, just to make sure at least they're not gaining an overwhelming amount of value on top of dealing with my threats.
Yeah, at this point in the game, in the mid game, working way into the late game, you need to apply pressure as best you can to the Jeskai control decks because the more cards they get, the more your stuff's gonna get dead or countered, and you're not gonna win after a certain point. So things like Narset, you have to deal with it. Luckily, there is the Binding the Old Gods in hand. Let's see what Narset finds here for Maddie. Lightning
Agreed.
the fairy. Ugh.
Excellent. It is kind of weird to look at this Jeskai control deck, but it is kind of looked at as a combo deck. You assemble the combo of Narset, Escanta, Teferi, Shark Typhoon, you win the game, and you got to try to prevent your opponent from assembling those and kill them beforehand. So it's a weird way to look at it, but that is kind of the game plan for most of these Jeskai control decks.
Here comes Corvold once again. Kitty Cat is going to go to the Planeswalker this time. So if Narset does want to activate again, she would be dealt with. Here comes Corvold. Now
it's a lot worse. It's a lot worse with Narset, even if it resolves. But this is another one of those turns. We see that 3 mana and Escanta over there. So you want to jam something, either Binding or Corvold. It's just which one? And, Corvold wouldn't draw that crazy amount of cards right now. You can at least sack Cat during your opponent's turn and draw 1 card. It's not great, but it's not awful.
It's something.
Yeah.
So Corvold will hit the battlefield. Going to sacrifice a land here. We'll get the counter, but not the card, thanks to Narset's passive. And has the option to do the second Witch's Oven. And it's going to go for it. So Aether Gust can send Corvold away at a certain point, but I think he's just going to go for the Escanta activation, like you mentioned, Corey.
Yeah, because Aether Gust can just send that packing here next turn, especially with Teferi untap. We're going to have access to, it looks like 5 mana after you play a Teferi, essentially. So you'd like that. You really want to see another 2-piece of interaction here. Another Gust, another Devout Decree. Lightning Helix isn't bad. It doesn't deal with everything here, but still a nice pickup.
There is also the option for Teferi to tuck Corvold into the deck, keep it away a few more turns. But with the second Oven out, we might just see Noriyuki Mori just sacrifice it at that point.
Absolutely. And we just got word that Sam Pardee got a little revenge on Arnie Huschenbeth in this round to move to 6 wins to top it out. So we'll see if Noriyuki Mori wins, be 6-1 as well. If not, Sam Pardee will be at the top of the pack alone.
Both players looking to advance their wins here. Remember that 9 is the magic number to get them into day 3 of competition. You want to be in that top 12. Ideally, you want to be in the top 4, as you'll have a far easier time of locking up your world spot.
Yeah, that top 4 is such great value when it looks to Sunday. Of course, everybody's goal is just to make that top 12 to start, but that top 4 is just gravy. Having to only go essentially 1-1. You win the first one, great, you're in. You lose one and then win the second one, you're in, instead of having to win a ton at the bottom. It makes a huge difference.
Here comes Teferi, hits the battlefield, gonna draw a card, finds Clifftop Retreat, and will be able to untap, leaving Maddie with all the mana he could possibly need to deal with the battlefield at the moment.
A little bit of a flood here from Matti Kuisma. Definitely looking for something. We're still not in complete panic mode yet, because we do have that Aether Gust to deal with Corvold, but after that...
Trail of Crumbs is such an excellent way to work around Narset, as it doesn't draw. It's just look at and take.
And looks like we might see Aether Gust now, or we might see the really, really nice play of, after draw step, set a stop if you're Matti Kuisma, and then Aether Gust Corvold after you've already drawn a card. So that way, if Noriyuki Mori wants to be able to find Corvold, it'll have to be through Trail of Crumbs, and without a land, that wouldn't be able to actually be able to work. We can do that in combat as well.
Yeah.
Since Narset is on the battlefield.
So as it stands, Kuisma is hanging on, doing a pretty good job of keeping control of the battlefield and the threats thereon.
Yep, been doing a great job of keeping control of those really big threats. But, Matti Kuisma is at 11. These cats have been doing some absolute work here so far.
Remember yesterday we kind of ranked everything. We gave them some medals, right?
We did,
yes. The cat one.
Yeah.
Cat deserves an honorary mention, I think, on the podium.
The cat's the coach.
The cat's just going to steal the medals afterwards.
Yeah, no, the cat's the coach, coaching all the other medalists. Yeah.
Okay. I can abide by that, as we're going to see a couple more sacrifices here. These cats are pinging happily along. No cards needed, but who needs those when you have cat oven and food? Corvold getting super duper chunky. Aether Gust just waiting in the wings to take care of it. But importantly, these cats are finding more things. So Narset, haha, sucks for you, but I'm still getting cards.
And I want to bring some attention to what Noriyuki Mori is doing here. Why would you, sack these cats right now and try to figure this out? It's very important for these Jund food decks to make a land drop every turn, because you can get so many cards that you're going to be playing something for the rest of the game when you have Cat Oven Trail. All you want to make sure is that you can multiple spell and play more and more and more spells as the game goes wide.
Yeah, exactly right. Because at a certain point, there's only so much control that Jeskai can have.
Yes.
And the more threats that you can deploy and play, the better.
And eventually, as we were saying, Jeskai has kind of assembled this combo here of Iskanta, Teferi, Narset. They're going way over the top. Every turn, Matti Kuisma is adding that piece. He's adding another piece. And at some point, it becomes far too much value to overcome unless you're also doing the same from the Jund food side. So you have to keep up, otherwise you fall behind really out of nowhere and really quickly.
Yeah, Trail of Crumbs is such an excellent card to combat the control decks, because it lets you keep up. It allows you to keep finding relevant threats, keep making land drops like you mentioned. And just a decision here between whether or not he wants to use that oven to kill Corvold, essentially, with a backup in hand, but decides to let it happen and keep up the activation in case of the Lightning Helix coming down. Because he's doing a really good job here of, chipping away the life total. And if you can keep Lightning Helix from gaining the life, great.
Agreed. And wow, is that really making a statement from Noriyuki Mori? Just a legendary 5-drop that you already have in hand. Be like, oh yeah, I'm snap keeping another one of those. I mean,
turns out Corvold's pretty good, huh? Yeah. Oh, hello, rest in peace.
Okay, interesting. Must have cited it in for the third game, so that wasn't on our graphic for initially. But yeah, it makes sense. Rest in peace is so good against these decks, and really is another one of those pieces that just kind of locks every avenue out. And rest in peace, the main thing it does, stops Cat Oven.
Yep. Does shut that down. The cats have been doing an excellent job, but looks like they're about to be benched as Rest in Peace makes its way onto the battlefield now. So it's a bit of an unfortunate situation here, because we can use the oven to snack on the cat and get it out again, But then that leaves the Woe Strider open to the Lightning Helix.
Yeah, that is a bit of the awkward thing here, but I think it is a little bit more important to get that cat down. When Matti Kuisma is going to go down to 8, then we have 5 power in play. Yeah, you miss out on a little bit of value. That Lightning Helix can bring them up to 11, and then you just have 2 cats. So yeah, actually, you're right. I think this is a tougher decision than it seems on surface value. Maybe you do just let that resolve. Good call, Haley.
You know, in this situation, I think it's more important to keep the life total down. Lightning Helix can go face, sure, so he can still get the life there. But having threats on the board, it's okay. It kind of offsets the life gain there. So,
and at this point, there's never going to be a Witch's Oven that's not going to be untapped. You know, without Cat Oven being able to be possible, now, no matter what, this Lightning Helix, if it gets aimed at a creature, which you really want, especially on Woe Strider, since it's going to hit you for 3 each turn, it's so huge to stop that lifelink, or that life gain, excuse me.
Now, the big decision here, where does Woe Strider go? It's so tempting to just keep shoving and try and get the opponent dead. But at the same time, Teferi is a very big problem, and Lightning Helix is going to take care of the Woe Strider insofar as that it will be forced to be sacrificed.
Oh, and this is just so brutal here for Noriyuki Mori. No matter what, cannot double spell anymore. Can't really do too many great Trail of Crumb triggers because of that Rest in Peace. Just one spell into the one flailing memory lapse of Matti Kuisma is really brutal here. I guess I like this line. You can go Binding, and then, you know, if that gets dealt with, at least you can sack a food and then activate Trail. So this is kind of that double spell range. But yeah, really, it's starting to be a really tough spot for Noriyuki to win this game.
At least on the plus side, Binding goes back on top. And if there's nothing that Maddie can draw, that will be able to deal with either Rest in Peace or the Teferi next turn. Finds a portable hole. Teferi will still have an activation. There is also Search for his Canter going. Let's see what he can find.
And at this point, though, Matti Kuisma is drawing 4 cards a turn. You're activating his Kanta. You're drawing from Teferi. Your natural draw step. Untapping his Kanta and drawing. With this much mana, you have plenty of access to do all those things. So at this point, you're drawing 4 cards, and Noriyuki Mori is drawing the same card over and over. Like, that's a huge difference here in how this game is turning out.
It certainly is. All of these cards are very good against the relevant threats that Noriyuki Mori would land on the battlefield. Portable holes, great at catching cats and ovens. Lightning Helix kills the 3 and 2 power toughness creatures, and then Justice Strike is great against Corvold, of which he knows that there are 2 waiting in the wings.
Yeah, it looks like Justice is going to be served here because Justice Strike just deals with everything. Everything in the deck right now can be handled by Justice Strike, so I think that seems like a great one. Unless your life total is really, really low and you're getting hit with Cat Oven, but with Rest in Peace really solves those problems.
I mean, sitting at 9 life, this is perfect for a control player, right? They only really start to panic when they're at 1.
Yeah, right now you see all those eyeballs that Matti Kuisma knows about. Perfect information from the control deck. It makes it so much easier to pick your Ascanta cards, and it's a really, really tough spot for these Jund decks.
Here comes Portable Hole. That will potentially go after a cat. Or is it going to go for an oven? Let's see. Oven's not really doing anything at the moment. It's just preventing. Yeah, I can hit Trail too, yeah.
Yep.
I think that's going to be Trail then.
Yeah, I think it's either Cauldron Familiar or Trail. I could see a case, you know, for either. You don't want to use your Justice Strike on Cauldron Familiar. And I guess if you don't hit Trail, the Witch's Oven is going to throw the cat into the oven. And then next turn, you can do that same play where you play Binding and then sack of food and activate. So I think to shut off that play, you hit Trail here, but we'll see what Matti Kuisma does.
Big think here for Maddie as he decides eventually to go for the Trail of Crumbs, leaving up Justice Strike and a Rogan Triumph to cycle. And good old Teferi's going to do some untapping here. There is Ascanta the Sunken Ruin back and available.
Teferi's your favorite card, right, Ailey?
Oh, yeah, I love him.
I knew it.
He's just the best.
The control
Second
master,
only
right?
to Yorion.
Hey! Everybody loves the beautiful bird serpent.
Yeah. Azcanta doing Azcanta things, finds a backup Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, because of course, why wouldn't it? Also finds a Shark Typhoon and Portable Hull, but Teferi seems to be the pick here for Matti Kuisma, at least the thing he's most enticed by.
Yeah, nice to just, it's really defeating, you know, right? Like you just play Binding, it's on the stack. You're like, okay, if I can deal with this Teferi, you know, maybe I'll be all right. And then it's just like, reveal Teferi. It's coming down next turn. And these are the really, really tough spots that these Jeskai control decks put in it. And this is why so many people played the deck. It's just that good at dealing with problems.
Yeah, and it's tough because, you know, if you can kill that Rest in Peace, your cat can get to work on the life total there of Matti Kuisma, but you can't leave Teferi alone because every time you'll draw a card with his ultimate, you're going to be exiling things, and nobody likes that.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's an interesting decision. We have the exact amount of lands to go hard cast into Teferi, 5/5 Shark to try to get a threat, draw, untap, Justice Strike. But with that line, unless you draw Memory Lapse or Aether Gust or something like that, Corvold gets to kind of go nuts, right? Like you get to sack the goat, you get to sack the familiar, you sack a land, you get to draw 3-4 cards next turn to try to put Noriyuki Mori back into this game. So the shields are kind of down from Maddie, so we'll see if it's more important to go to Teferi, activate Azcanta, untap it, and try to find an answer before Corvold hits the stack, or if just values the fan favorite, the hard cast.
Oh yeah, give me that hard cast Shark. Here comes Teferi, Hero of Dominaria, I guess.
Yes,
that's on the battlefield now. He can untap. Justice Strike will be available for one of the Corvolds. And finds another Shark Typhoon too. So we might see double Shark here, and Maddie might want to start doubling some Sharks. As he's got 5 minutes left. Sure, it's not, you know, the least amount of time, but that's going to be a factor if he takes too long with his turns here.
Yeah, I think that play is really Shark, hero of chat, you know. And here we might see a really sweet play. Like normally, Corvold, let's get rid of some lands, right? Like that's the main thing. We got a lot of those. Binding is not doing anything. Let's get rid of that.
Nom nom nom.
We'll see if Noriyuki agrees with my line there.
Well, we're going to have to slap a few things first. Well, snack on a few other things first. So draw a couple of lands here while we can. Kitty Cat is going to go west, unfortunately, but Corvold will draw a couple cards and finds a Thoughtseize. That's quite nice. It doesn't do super much considering Maddie's still drawing 4 cards per turn.
Yeah, not bad. Hasn't played the land drop, I believe, so we're still going to be able to Thoughtseize. We got 3 cards out of this. We're still going to get a 4th here when we sacrifice this Binding. Or no, correction. It has to be on the battlefield, excuse me.
Yeah, Corvold's out of there, so no final card there on Binding, but it's okay. It's not the end of the world. Prismari command the draw here from Maddie. What can he find? How many Sharks can he make? And will he win this game? In a few turns' time, with a draw like Justice Strike, you got to think it's looking pretty darn good. There's another search for Azcanta and Expressive Iteration, so he's just going to keep on digging.
Yeah, and now we're getting to
the Value Town, please.
Boy. That might do it right there. The one hope that Noriyuki Mori had is, well, you know what? I kept 2 Corvolds for a reason, because eventually I want to win the game with this. And that really could have happened. Justice Strike was a great draw to help out, but Narset was what really could be the nail, because not being able to get those cards from Corvold here, not having a graveyard to Cat Oven, having this army of Sharks here, this is very much skewing in favor of Matti Kuisma outside of the clock. We're starting to get a little close to that, but we have an army of Sharks to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a 3-turn clock with the amount of Sharks that are going to be coming out soon, so.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting there. You see the top of the deck, just because you put so many cards on the bottom with Narset and Expressive Iteration, that in real life, you're never going to be able to keep track of that, right? Unless you have like a photographic memory. Yeah. But on Arena, it's just such a great program that it keeps track of it for you. So Matti Kuisma can just look and see, okay, this is what I'm going to draw for the next 5, 10, rest of the game, really, which is pretty funny.
Basically like having Ranger's Class, or I don't know, whatever else lets you look at the top card of your library.
Yeah, that's actually the one benefit of these Jeskai control decks no longer having Brainstorm. You don't play Fabled Passage. So you actually, at the end of the game, you start to know your bottom cards because you put so many of them to the bottom with Narset and Expressive Iteration.
I did love Maddie's little eulogy to Brainstorm. He said, what are your thoughts about Historic going into Deco submission? Still mourning the loss of my good friend Brainstorm. Unsure how to cope with not having perfect lands to spell ratio at every game. Well, Maddie, you're doing pretty darn well for yourself so far, sir.
Oh, God, that is real so good.
So, where do you think it all went wrong here for Noriyuki Mori?
Well,
Is it that rest in peace?
I'm actually this Mayhem Devil. This might not be over here.
Oh, Mayhem Devil.
Yeah, this is interesting because you can just do a lot of sacrificing beforehand. But I don't think there was one real moment where there was a mistake made where something went wrong. It was all on Matti Kuisma's Jeskai control deck to find the right answers because yeah, exactly. Matti Kuisma's opening hand was just a bunch of ways to find stuff, right? Search for his Kanta, expressive iteration, and he did that. He found those things. Yeah.
How many sacrifices can we get here?
So the worst case scenario, Matti Kuisma can aim that Helix at the face.
He's got it. Oh, yeah, that's
Helix
true.
at the face, and then Jeskai or Justice Strike to be able to hit Mayhem Devil. 7 pings seems like it's a little bit too much. We also have Prismari command to shoot Goose. Yeah. Maybe kill an Oven. 2 damage. Oh, interesting. It looks like the draw 2, discard 2 is being pointed at Noriyuki Mori, which is just discard 2 with Narset.
So cheeky. Yuck.
Yeah.
That's very cheeky, but very good. So there goes an Oven. We still have 3 food. We can sacrifice all 3 of them, I think. 1, 2. No, we're 1 land short. 5, yeah. Oh, wait, we still have a land for turn.
Yeah, we have a land for turn. So realistically, this is game on board. But the Lightning Helix is known knowledge. But yeah, wow. Just complicating the game in this such way is really making this clock factor become more real. Wow. Yeah, at this point, the clock is coming into play. Noriyuki Mori is still at 24, so.
Yeah. So we won't be able to eat the food now. So Lightning Helix. Oh my goodness. This is an interesting decision here for Maddie. And he doesn't have the time really to think about it too long. He's got 1 minute and 40 seconds.
Yeah, you got to start playing cards, Maddie. And it comes down to the point where, like, do you just... It's going to be Lightning or Justice Strike on Corvold and then Lightning Helix on Mayhem Devil.
Oh, no. I was about to say I could do it now.
No, if he still had the mana available.
Yeah, if he had the mana available. Darn it, mana. So inconsiderate. Justice Strike will take care of Corvold, Fakehurst King.
And we know about this Lightning Helix, so it's pretty face-up information. Well played by Matti Kuisma here.
Yeah, and the thing is, even if he had gone for the food line, he would never have gotten the opportunity to get all those triggers needed.
Nope.
Once Lightning Strike was on the stack, right?
No, not a chance. Because it would have just had to have been a case where you aim Lightning Helix at the face, probably. But I don't think that would have been enough.
Yeah.
Okay, now it's gonna be a untap Helix this quick, do all my things, attack, hope that's enough, and really has to put the pedal to the metal.
Memory lapse and Narset revealed off the Narset.
Under 1 minute 30.
Another, yeah, that's going to take it too far out. So here goes Lightning Helix to the Mayhem Devil. That can be sacked in response to prevent the life gain. But we do see that there's another one down to 2. This is so incredibly close here for Noriyuki Mori, but this army of sharks, it's coming.
And now the memory lapse, no matter what Noriyuki draws, that's going to be hit. So now it's going to be just a quick attack all button. Memory lapse, whatever you do, attack all again, and that should be lethal next turn, giving Matti Kuisma enough time, as long as, you know, an internet lag or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, he's got a bunch of food stacked up.
Yeah.
He can gain some life, but I think with the amount of sharks here, it's too much.
We can gain 12. We have 5, 11. Oh, yeah, it's well. Hit that beautiful attack all button that we know and love.
Oh, yeah.
And wow, with under a minute, is going to take this down and advance to 5-2. Noriyuki's going to be 5-2 as well. And Sam Pardee is going to be at the top alone.
Yeah, excellent game there, Matti Kuisma. You can see how much that means to him. Yeah, you're sweating. You made us sweat there, friend.
Oh,
Goodness, so inconsiderate for our nerves. Huh.